Bizarrely and brilliantly, Marmoush goes the other way. He's so dangerous. I'd love to see this shape a bit more. And with his Oasis man there watching in the crowd, they weren't looking back in anger after all like that.
These players are legendary. That's what Pep Guardiola said after his Manchester City side came from behind to win 2-1 at Bournemouth and reach an FA Cup semi-final for the 7th year in a row. Haaland and Omar Marmoush scored the goals, but it was Nico O'Reilly who changed the game after a Guardiola tactical tweak. I'm Craig Alfari, and there's no one better to talk us through it than the Suns tactics man, Dean Scoggins. Dino, in Tactics Exposed Team Talk, you talked about Bournemouth's press, tick. Talked about Haaland and Man City going long to him, tick. You also mentioned Omar Marmoush will have a big impact on the game, tick. So talk us through the 5 things you noticed in the brilliant cup tie at Vitality.
Yeah, we called a few things in the preview show, which is always nice, isn't it? But yeah, in this one, great win, great way from Pep to go through again. Life O'Reilly is number 1. Nico O'Reilly, his half-time change, the super sub and why it worked. But not just that, number 2 is pressure in midfield, and that creates a diamond in midfield for Pep. How he changes experienced players to make that work. Number 3, Omar God. Now, I talked about him being one of my favourite players so far this season, and what a run for his goal. We'll look at that. And then, as you mentioned there, the long haul, the long ball to Haaland, Ederson and Haaland working together, and that was really successful for them early on. He should have had a hat-trick in the first half. On the negative side for Man City, Nunes, never been a right back, never should be a right back, and he was absolutely cooked by Bournemouth for that first goal.
You know, it was a great cup tie at Vitality. It's been the FA Cup of surprises, but I suppose it's no surprise that Man City are into the Final Four for a 7th year in a row. What do you make of the game overall?
Yeah, it was, I mean, you can see how much it means to Pep. It's really refreshing as well. You know, people downgrade the FA Cup and you know, downgrade its importance. But you look at Bournemouth, they really wanted it. You look at teams like Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, and obviously the way Pep treats it, it's a great lineup in the semi-final. Look, from a smaller club perspective, maybe, and people don't want to see Manchester City win it again. But look, it was a fantastic cup tie, and Pep, genius, turned it on its head once again. And Nico O'Reilly is having quite the days out in the FA Cup. I mean, he had a goal against Salford. There was a couple of goals against Plymouth, I think, and then a couple of assists here. So one of the players of the FA Cup so far.
That nicely moved us on to point 1. And you mentioned Nico O'Reilly. And if you look at CFA, we hear a lot about Haaland, we hear about Cobham, we hear about Carrington. But in recent years, the CFA, in terms of Man City, have produced incredible players. Think about Cole Palmer, think about Morgan Rogers, you think about Liam Delap. Is Nico O'Reilly the next one on the production line?
Well, it looks like it, and Pep Guardiola giving him a very loving gaze there, and I'm not surprised after the way he came on. But we shouldn't forget he's a number 10. So his position is an attacking midfielder playing off the front. You know, he's a rangy runner, he's tall. So him to play at left back in this, obviously being left-footed, but was quite a bold thing from Pep. But it was for a particular reason, and there was a variety of reasons, actually. One of them was that Kusanov had been booked in the first half, so he was the obvious one to take off. The second thing is that what it did is it put Ruben Diaz in his more natural right-hand side centre-back position, and that meant Gvardiol came in as the left centre-back. He can do the left-back job or the left centre-back job. But what it also meant was Nunes on the right and O'Reilly on the left played more like wing-backs, and Kovacic came and dropped in the gap. So by bringing on a more attacking player, but taking away a little bit of his defensive responsibilities, because it almost became Manchester United style 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1 for Manchester City. And it really confused Bournemouth. And I mean, it took 3 minutes for the first goal to come. But, you know, fair play to the lad. I don't think they gave him too many instructions, because he was just sent out to warm up on the field while Pep talked to his experienced players in the dressing room at half-time. But immediate impact. He's clearly got a great touch. He went charging up the left-hand side, and he we'll see from his touch map, most of those touches were in the attacking half, so he wasn't frightened to get forward. He was given that freedom from Gundogan inside him, from Kovacic playing in the back 3 again, and then from Gundogan playing as that sort of left centre-back. So, yeah, really impressive. And as Pep said afterwards, he will start the semi-final.
It was surprising to hear Pep say that. And I suppose with Guardiola this season, which has been very difficult, the utilisation of wing-backs or full-backs has been a topic of conversation. I'm a Chelsea fan. I saw it in the game at the Etihad where we saw Nunes on one side, saw Vardy on the other side. Do you think going forward, especially in this cup competition, we'll see Nico O'Reilly play a bigger part for Man City as one of those wing-backs?
I think he will, and I think there could be an argument for him playing there in the Premier League games as well, because Pep's always used full-backs as a weapon in his formation, and whether that's the inversion of a fullback, and whether that Rico Lewis has been one who does it a lot. Kyle Walker would then make a back three when the other one inverted. We saw England do that last week, where they create that 3-2-5 setup in attack, or 2-3-5, hopefully, if you're going very attacking. But yeah, there's no reason why he can't play there. He gave them more balance. He actually took the pressure off Nunes on the other side, because he'd had a shocking first half, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But yeah, it actually meant that City had this out ball that went the other way. And it wasn't just Nico O'Reilly, which probably moves us sort of seamlessly onto point 2 about the diamond in midfield, was what they did really cleverly, Man City, was they used De Bruyne, and then when Grealish came on, he did the same thing, and then Foden the other side, and it was Haaland and Marmoush up front. But essentially, they create a diamond in midfield. So that means that Kovacic has dropped back in between the two centre-backs as the base of it. You bring two people in very narrow, which combats Bournemouth because they press you really narrow. I think we'll be able to show a grab of the build-up to Bournemouth's goal, which shows that Bournemouth press you on one side of the field. They bring you right into positions that you don't want to be, and that leaves you space the other side if you get it right, which they didn't with the first goal, but we'll come back to that. But what City did was get De Bruyne to go on Cook, who was the fullback, and bring him into the middle of the field. So you're dragging in with him. I talk about a defender on a rope on this show quite a lot. If you go into an area where the defender thinks, well, I can't leave him there because he's going to turn and spin me and go the other way, and what I want to do is be in line with the back four. So you sort of get stuck halfway in between. And then De Bruyne takes him in. Gundogan was doing the same, bringing the midfield in. And that left Nico O'Reilly with all that space up the left-hand side. And I was really fascinated. I went back to watch it 3 or 4 times. When Pep brought Jack Grealish on, he was talking to him, and I was trying to lip read. And what he was saying was, don't worry about the ball. Yeah. He was saying, you make this run, you come here, you come inside, and don't worry about the ball. Now, that seems weird. Tell Jack Grealish not to worry about the ball. But the point is, take the player away, because we're getting so much joy with Nico O'Reilly. And it was tactical masterclass from Pep at half-time. And I was a bit surprised that he didn't start with a sort of more narrow midfield and wider players, and I was surprised Marmoush didn't start as well. But talk about flick the switch and change the tactical element like that. It was absolutely brilliant, and he's got his experienced players, Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, Kovacic, and Foden and De Bruyne to carry that out and free up the young kid down the left. So amazing. Like
you mentioned, point 2 is pressure creates diamonds. Was it purely a numbers game, though? Because like you mentioned, Bournemouth's press, I call it brave. Yeah. They kind of cheat, and we saw it with their goal. Is it a case that Guardiola maybe assessed it, and that's why he changed at half-time, as opposed to starting with that formation?
Yeah, Bournemouth's press is very brave. You're quite right. And what then City have got to do is be brave as well. Okay. So instead of switching the ball like they did from Nunes from that first Bournemouth goal, which gives Bournemouth time to get over the field, you have to play into midfield to make them all come in with you, chase the ball in with you, and then play out of there, which then means you catch them out of possession. So yeah, De Bruyne and Foden going in narrow. Silva is just a tactical genius. I say that all the time. He's the one who carries out these little things on the field for Guardiola that kind of go unnoticed, but then when you watch it back afterwards, you think, why was he over there? Oh, right, he's there to take that man away and move that man out of position. So, yeah, I'm sure the chalkboard was out at half-time for Pep, and he had those 4 or 5 experienced players in this position saying, right, this is how we're going to break Bournemouth, and they did it absolutely brilliantly.
You mentioned Bernardo Silva, a man who does go unnoticed. I agree with that. He's a Swiss Army knife for Pep, and he ensures that he can do or facilitate all the things that he wants to do tactically. A man that doesn't go unnoticed, and the man that I think will be pivotal for Pep Guardiola going forward, Omar Marmoush. Yeah. Oh my God. He comes off the bench, an incredible goal, and sets them up for a semi-final tie that I don't think they would have made if he doesn't come off and have that impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now, obviously, we're not sure of how long Haaland's going to be out injured, left the ground in a boot and on crutches. So, but what a replacement to have. I mean, as I said, I was surprised he didn't start. And you know, in the preview show, we talked about the triangle up front of Haaland at the point of it, and then the two players running off him. I expected that to be Marmoush and Foden. As it turned out, at the start it was De Bruyne and Foden, but that didn't really matter. But what I want to focus on with Marmoush is his run. Okay, it's absolutely amazing. And look, the touch, I don't want to take away from the touch and pass from Nico O'Reilly, right, which is really, really good. Yeah. He gets inside and he plays a sort of outside of the boot flick pass, which is very, very high quality, showing that he plays a number 10. But Marmoush goes the opposite way that you'd expect him to go. Yeah. You know, when the ball's coming into a player sort of inside left where Nico O'Reilly was, you'd expect the striker to back off because he wants the ball inside him so he can take it towards the goal. Mm-hmm. So he take a couple of steps back, have the ball into feet and go. Bizarrely and brilliantly, Marmoush goes the other way. And what that means is, as a defender, they had no idea which one of the two of them was going to pick him up. And in the meantime, nobody did. Yeah. So he went backwards across the line, which opened up this big space sort of in the left-back channel, and nobody went with him. And look, the finish was good. I would imagine that Kepa wanted to do a little bit better than he did. But let's not take... Goal scorers is more fun than talking about goalkeepers, isn't it? So, yeah, brilliant, brilliant run. And those little darting runs that he makes around the edge of the area, he's so, so dangerous. And look, maybe it was just a ploy that we know as the game opens up and Bournemouth get a bit more tired, we'll be able to bring him on. Obviously, he came on for Haaland's injury. But yeah, so, so impressive. I just love him as a player, and I can't wait to see more of him.
In Germany, we saw him play in a multitude of positions, but I think down the middle, for me, is his best position. Where do you think he plays long-term at the start of the 11 for Man City?
Well, I think in that tactic where you've got Haaland plus one or two, it suits him down to the ground, because you can, if you have someone like Foden in there working hard, and not to say Marmoush doesn't work hard, but it gives him a little bit more freedom to play closer to Haaland and play off him. But look, with Haaland potentially out injured, there's just a ready-made replacement. So, yeah, I don't care where he plays as long as he's on the pitch.
Do you think he's got the goal-scoring nous to really succeed at the highest level in the Premier League? Because for me, in terms of the goal, obviously the run's amazing, but it's the touch and the spatial awareness to know that you can take that touch to then finish it off brilliantly. Obviously, Kepa should have done a lot better. Has he got the ability to score goals at the highest level in the Premier League?
I really think he has, yeah. I mean, he was outscoring Harry Kane, I think, the first half of the season in Germany, and that's no mean feat. But also, I think he'll just get better. Man City obviously get a lot of chances. They create a lot of chances, and he's playing for Pep. So, yeah, sky's the limit.
Erling Haaland, obviously a man that got on the score sheet, would be frustrated in terms of his first half performance. Missed a penalty, missed a gilt-edged chance as well, but got on the score sheet in the second half. In team talk, you mentioned Erling Haaland and Man City going long to him. It came to fruition in the game. Speak about how effective that tactic was.
Yeah, it was, and it was slightly different to what I thought, but it was long. It was Ederson into Haaland and the two off him. But what they did quite cleverly was, and look, it worked early on because he should have had a hat-trick in the first half, Erling Haaland. Like, Bournemouth were sort of dominant and looked like they were more organised, but as I thought they would, City just went over that Bournemouth midfield early on, and it worked really well. But what they did was they split the centre-backs on the edge of the box, and Ederson gave it to one of them, and then they gave it back to him, and then he went long. So it wasn't long straight away. It was almost like a 1-2. And he played, I think it was like 34% of his passes were long passes, which for someone like Ederson, who has so much of the ball, is a lot. But what was really nice as well was, again, another little... I like to watch managers in the dugouts. I know that's a bit weird, but that's just like what I'm like. But it was just before the Haaland chance that he put over the bar, where Pep called him over, and he basically said, I don't want you in the central position. I want you just to the left or to the right of it, because that creates the angle for Ederson, and that also creates the space for the two players joining in to run on to the second ball. And that's actually what happened. And it wasn't actually a pass that put him through, it was a Bournemouth deflection. But he came towards where Pep was on that sort of inside left channel, closer to where Pep's dugout was, and then he wins the header. Then it runs on and he runs in. So, yeah, it was very direct, and he did get a lot of joy. He looks a little bit off at the moment, Haaland. There was sort of this sort of weird smiles when he missed the chances, which I found slightly odd, but maybe because he knows he normally puts them away. And look, who are we to argue when the man's got 30 goals again this season? The only issue he's having is from the penalty spot at the moment. We'll show the proper stats, but yeah, not a great penalty again.
He is struggling in front of goal, and we see Haaland be so clinical in front of goal, but we know he's going to get on the score sheet. But when you have one of the best playing goalkeepers we've ever seen, or ball-playing goalkeepers we've ever seen, you've got Erling Haaland, who's one of the most physical strikers we've ever seen. Do you think that Man City and Pep Guardiola should go long a lot more to Haaland than they do?
Yeah, and I identified it earlier in the season when Marmoush arrived, and I thought it was, lots more teams are direct now. Newcastle are direct. Liverpool can be quite direct as well. Bournemouth are very direct because they don't mind chasing the ball and trying to win second balls. And Arsenal have done it a lot in the second half of the season because Raya will hit that number 9. These aren't Sam Allardyce, old-fashioned hoofs from the right back, okay? These are long passes. And that's, as you say, because someone like Ederson is so good, he is picking out a maybe 5-yard square that he's going to land the ball in, and that's where Haaland's going to be. And then off there, you can play. And as long as you've got people working hard, and as Pep said, when they came to Bournemouth in November before Christmas, he said they came with their flip-flops and they weren't willing to race and battle against Bournemouth. In this game, they really did. And if you're going to go long and play that way, the midfielders and the 2 attackers supporting the striker have to be willing to work their socks off to get in that position. And they did. And look, as I said, it wouldn't have been unfair if City had been 3-1 up at half-time, but as it was, they changed it and won anyway, so all good.
The final thing you noticed was Matheus Nunes. He said he got cooked, and he well and truly did. He's not a proper fullback, but in this game, his weaknesses were very, very glaring. And do you think that's an issue for City going forward?
Yeah, real issue. Will was quite shocked of how critical I was a few weeks ago of Matheus Nunes, but we saw it again here. So they will know before the game, okay, Man City. They'll have talked about it. They'll have said, they're going to press us hard. Throw-ins, they really go at you on throw-ins. They really go at you when you're moving the ball along the back 4, and they force you to go into areas you don't want to go into. That's the trap, right? As you said, a really brave press. But then what they also do is they want you to hit this sort of cross-field ball, which is what I said in the tactics preview show as well, in the team talk show. And they want you to hit this cross-field ball because even if the pass is good, that gives them time while the ball's in the air to shift their whole shape over to the other side of the field. But what Nunes does is he hits this blind ball into midfield. But I also want to... So the reason I've said cooked, okay, is because Lewis Cook was sort of hiding, and he'd made this very brave move, and we'll show it on the grab, where he was marking Kevin De Bruyne, and he decides, I'm going to go as Nunes is about to hit the pass. So he leaves De Bruyne, which is incredibly brave, because if Nunes passes half good and goes to someone and then the ball goes to De Bruyne, Cook could be in trouble. But he trusts his other centre-back that he's got and going to cover him. He goes and he's moving before Nunes even completes his pass. And then as the ball comes, he intercepts it for the Bournemouth goal. But it was really poor from Nunes. Not only was it poor in giving the ball away, he then has the chance to make up for it afterwards by just doing a simple defender's job. Okay, he takes a look over his shoulder, he sees Kluivert, and he thinks, all right, I've got him. And then he switches off. And then in that split second where Brooks plays the ball in behind, then you've got Kluivert going blindside of him. He's not even got you to me to cover. It's not far. Just get across and cover and make sure it doesn't get across. It wasn't even midfield defending, let alone proper defending. It was absolutely terrible, terrible stuff. And thankfully for Nunes, he's got a genius manager, and with his Oasis man there watching in the crowd with the second half change, they weren't looking back in anger after all of that.
You had to throw one in there. You had to get one in there.
I got it.
Really quickly on Nunes, on Man City when it comes to fullbacks, what we've seen from Pep Guardiola in recent years is he buys the centre-back, he ends up playing him a fullback. Look at Guardiola, who's one of the best players, one of the best centre-backs at the World Cup, and he's being utilised as a fullback. Is this the summer that Man City go and address that fullback issue? Because we're seeing Matheus Nunes, who's a central player, playing out there and it's costing City in big games.
Yeah, as I said on a previous show, I'm not sure what Matheus Nunes is. I don't know whether he's a midfielder, a 10, a winger. He's certainly not a fullback. So, yeah, absolutely, they've got to address that. Look, tactically, they're all in the right position, but it's that instinct in those positions that's not quite right. You know, I really do think they need both sides. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Guardiola. You know, he plays in a way that he can push into the number 10 position as an inverted fullback. He moved into a left centre-back position yesterday from left back and did a brilliant job. So he's the utility defender. But yeah, go and get a right back, Pep. And I'd love to see this shape a bit more, maybe even against Man United next week.